Episode 58 of the Unscripted Company podcast, coming at you with another fresh episode of one of the fastest growing unscripted podcasts on the internet. You got Riley with you, got myself. It's been a crazy week in Texas. We've had some weather. I hate to say that we'll start off probably talking about the weather, but I know you got some crazy weather up there. We had some slightly less crazy weather, but crazy nonetheless down here in Central Texas. But let's get things started off with a little bit of a question of the week. What do you got, Riley?
If you found out you were immortal, but no one else was, would you tell anyone?
I feel like initially no, but yeah, I would imagine there would probably be a very small, tight-knit cohort of individuals, potentially only one other person that would end up knowing. Well, let me revise that answer. If you're immortal, that means you live forever, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it would end up being multiple people because you would be living through generations of people.
Uh-huh.
And so probably at least one person per generation, I think would have to be remotely aware, because if you had any friends or significant others, wouldn't they notice that you're immortal? Like, you know, they're going throughout their entire, let's assume they live to 90 years old, right? Live a good, long, healthy life. I feel like they would notice at some point that you were not aging with them as well. And if, you know, life would be pretty depressing without any kind of companionship. So
Would it though?
I think so. Isn't that?
I don't know. I could stay in my room and stay on my computer all day.
But it's easy to do that for days, years. What about millennia? Like if you're immortal, right? You might live to see the personal computer no longer exist because it goes on to the next generation of hardware. So I would imagine at some point, like, when you want to at least have someone to share at least, I don't know, 50 years worth of time with or something. I'm picturing, or go ahead.
In that particular time, no. I mean, because you have to think, like, what if you found that person and you're like, oh crap, like, I'm not going to get to see them in the next life, whatever the case may be. Like, you would be the one always end up like hurting yourself because you're choosing to be with these people, and then you're losing them as friends, and you're losing your loved ones or whatever. Like, I wouldn't want to go through that. I would just rather just keep my distance from people, you know?
This reminds me a lot of, have you ever watched Doctor Who? Are you familiar with Doctor Who?
I know what it is. I've never watched it.
Yeah, no worries. So basically you have the Doctor. In a sense, he's immortal, ? I'm sure hardcore fans would tell me he's not. But he struggles with the same issue as, you know, he's relatively, let's just say, immortal. And he has these companions. Now each, you know, Doctor in each set of seasons has different companions because, you know, the Doctor lives forever, theoretically doesn't age. So people just come and go. They die from old age. They die from adventures, things like that. But he struggles with the same thing of, like, you don't want to travel the universe alone, but also you have to struggle with the life and death aspects of normal life. So you're telling me you just rough this whole thing, this whole immortality thing forever, just by yourself?
Yeah, like I like that shit, but that's just me. Like I would find like the best job ever, and I would like, okay, here's the thing: I'd find the best job ever, and I'd be like, you'll never have to find another worker again. Like, I won't tell them why.
Would you even need a job? Because if you're immortal, right, couldn't you get away with things that would allow you to have sources of wealth because
like
you're immortal?
What?
I don't know. Easy
you gotta
answer.
Pay bills.
Yeah, easy answer would be, couldn't you just like walk into a bank and take its entire holdings and just walk away and go to another part of the world for, you know, a millennia and then come back and then rinse and repeat? I'm picturing.
Yeah. No,
yeah,
yeah,
like,
I mean, yeah, no, you're right. I could.
You're immortal.
Yeah.
I'm picturing. What is that movie? Is it Jumper? No, it's not Jumper.
Oh yeah, it is.
There's a movie with the teenager, and he has like the abilities to like teleport into places.
Yeah, Jumper.
Is it Jumper? Okay.
Yeah.
And then I remember, is it Samuel L. Jackson?
Samuel L. Jackson was
trying to track him down. Like, it's that concept, but truly immortal, right?
Well,
so
what I would do then is I would just have to get enough money to where I could just invest, and I'd never have to steal money again. But then I could legitimately just live off of what I have.
Yeah.
And find ways to, like, I would find ways to get involved with people that would then further myself along. But realistically, like, I would have just a house out in the middle of nowhere. I'd have, my satellite internet, whatever, and then I would just do my thing.
You're gonna be like Wolverine in the Logan movie, right? You're just gonna be doing your thing. Maybe you live outside of a super small town. When I mean small town, I mean like there's two businesses, one of which is probably a bar with like 5 people, one of which is the bartender, and that's just some people see you, they don't know who you are, they don't know what your backstory is, they just know we don't talk to this guy. He just kind of does his own thing. They got this Unabomber lifestyle out there in the woods.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Not that I have anything against anyone. It's just like, why would I want to put myself through hurt?
Yeah.
Like, why would I want to have? Because you have to think, like, if I was to date somebody, like, and marry that person, I have to watch that person grow old.
Yeah.
And then I would never, like, I'd have to watch my kids grow old and die before I would ever even die or even get like any kind of age.
Well, here's the tricky question: do the kids get immortality? Do they get half immortality? If they get half your
not
genes,
based on
half
this
the
question,
other?
they don't.
Okay. Yeah. So which terrain would you live in if you had to pick? You're like, I know I heard you say like the woods or something, but
probably like a mountain, like Colorado type stuff. Like,
okay,
I probably live somewhere out there.
Okay, you'd be the Grinch looking over Whoville and judging their celebratory.
I'd be like Deadpool, couldn't die, or whatever the case may be. But that's just me. Like, I mean, even now, it's like, I mean, don't get me wrong, like I have people I talk to, but it's like if I don't really have to talk to anyone, and it sucks because of what I do for work. But I mean, after I do whatever I have to do for the day, it's like I'm okay just being okay.
You're an introvert. You're an introvert.
I'm not an introvert by any means. Isn't the term like when you're technically both? Like, isn't there like a term that mixes the two? It's like an omnivert or something like that.
Sure.
I don't know. I've heard something like that, but like I'm an extrovert when I need to be, but as I've gotten older, I'm just like, I don't care.
Yeah.
Like, and it's not that I like, and for anyone who's listening, don't take that out of context. When I do my job, like I love my job, but if I'm at home, like I'm at home, like I'm not doing anything. So
yeah, it's your domain. That makes sense. Man, speaking of your home though, all of Texas had some crazy weather this past week. There are parts of where you had in like Amarillo in the Panhandle where it was like below freezing. I think I had an image to convey this. And this isn't even the first time something like this has happened this year in particular. For those of you that are in audio land, I just threw up an image where it shows up in Amarillo, 35 degrees with snow, and then down in Brownsville, 99 degrees and definitely hot. But I know as part of that too, I saw one of the topics you put in the notes. Y'all had, it looks like an F1 tornado hit up in Irving, and then I know there's just crazy winds all across Texas too. How was that?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the weather that we got, we were asleep for, if I'm being honest. I mean, it didn't hit till late night. Dana didn't get a lot of sleep. I slept like a baby, on the other hand. But yeah, I mean, the majority of it hit overnight. We didn't have, like, we were in the 10% chance to get a tornado too in our area, but we just had a lot of straight force winds, and then people were like, oh, there was nothing confirmed, but then apparently they confirmed it like a day or two later, like, hey, the EF1 actually touched down, but it hardly did anything besides tear up an apartment building and like a couple businesses, and that was it. Like, it wasn't down long enough to do any sustained damage. But
I'm trying to remember if I sent this TikTok video to you. I might not have, but it was a video that went kind of viral where it was a home inspector up in Fort Worth, like North Fort Worth, and he was showing this new construction subdivision and all the homes that were still kind of just the frame got put up and nothing else, how the wind kind of just like huffed and puffed and knocked all the houses down.
Yeah.
Obviously you had like roofs. I know in Central Texas we had some roofs where they just like all the shingles got wiped off basically.
Yeah.
But up there it was crazy seeing like, yeah, it was like the big bad wolf came through town and was like, I'm gonna huff and puff, and down came the house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It wasn't awful, just a lot of rain. And then apparently the next night or the next day or something similar to that, we had something similar, but it wasn't mostly in our area. It was just Central Texas. So
yeah,
nothing too crazy.
Yeah. Well, glad nothing too crazy happened. I mean, it's crazy when you get 65-mile-an-hour winds. You know, things get knocked over, damaged,
Yeah,
etc. Yeah. How's everything else going this week, though?
just another week, man. Just
It's
another
another week.
week.
Another
Yeah.
week. Cool, cool.
What about y'all?
Yeah. No, it's been good. Earlier today, we were watching. You know who Markiplier is? He's a YouTuber, streamer, etc. He's playing this game. I don't know if you've ever seen the game. The first game's called The Forest, and the second game's called Sons of the Forest.
I've played both.
Yeah, great games. I've owned them both, but I've yet to actually sit down and play them myself because I watched someone play the first one, and once you kind of know the ending to the game, I'm like, all right, like I could play it, but I know how it ends. But I was watching him play through the second one, and it's a fun watch. It's kind of it's an eerie game. Did you actually finish the second one?
Yeah.
Or did you? Yeah.
Played them both. I enjoy survival games,
Yeah.
but I haven't played them in a while. But I enjoy
Yeah.
those types of games. So.
Yeah. That's cool. That's cool. Yeah. I guess the only other thing I guess I've noted is like we've been furniture shopping. So, dude, furniture's expensive, man. Like good furniture, unnecessarily expensive. Like I get it.
I don't get it. It shouldn't be. It's just fluff and stuffing, and that's it.
Yeah.
Like,
they make this cool material now, and I wish I could recall what it is. I could probably find it in a quick Google search, but one of the furniture stores we went to, they had these couches where at first I thought it was just like a faux leather that they had, like a polyester kind of leather thing, but it was its own like proprietary fabric that is scratch and puncture resistant. So she showed us an example of the lady that was running the place. She took a thumbtack to it and was like legit scraping it and then like stabbing it, and the fabric is self-healing. And so it's like basically like picture like a cat with like sharp claws could go to it and it wouldn't destroy it, nor would you see the scratch marks on there. However, very expensive material, so of course you would imagine. So we didn't end up getting that, but it was very cool to see that the technology exists out there, dude. They make couches that cats can no longer destroy. So
I just buy couch covers.
yeah.
That's at the end of the day. Like I'd rather see something else get torn up, and then I just spend another $40 and get 2 more couch covers, and then just keep replacing them. So
does Luna do that at all? Or is she pretty cool about it? Yeah.
Yeah, all the time.
All the time.
All the time.
Dang, like do it like the way that they would use like a scratch post, or is it more of just like the kneading or both? Like I guess
they go in.
Ooh, no.
Yeah.
No, thank you.
And so that's the only reason why we keep that old ottoman that we got is because Luna's already torn that up. I'm like, cool, just go claw on that because you've already done it. So just don't let them claw on the couches though. So.
No, that makes sense. And I get it. Couch covers way cheaper to replace than whole couches because, man, we also saw they make these like leather couches now. There's this company, and I should have wrote down or even looked up what these are called, but they make these really nice leather couches, but they have metal frames. So instead of a wood frame, it's a metal frame. It's basically a lifetime warranty on it. Now, of course, you damage the leather, that's on you if you damage the leather, but the frame itself, basically indestructible to a sense. So
interesting.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. But also, it's like a $6,000 couch. So, you get what you pay for.
I will never spend that much on couches.
Yeah, no, it's crazy to think that, but there's definitely a market out there for people who have that level of disposable income. I've always associated nice leather couches with when you make it in life. That's when you get the leather couch.
I still won't buy leather. I'm not
really?
much. Yeah. Never? No.
More of a fabric guy, or what's your go to? I guess that'd be the only option, wouldn't it?
Yeah, but I mean, you got different variations of fabric. But I mean, I just wouldn't buy I don't know. I wouldn't buy anything like that.
Yeah.
To me, it's like there's so much upkeep that has to be done with it.
Yeah.
I'm good.
Yeah. That makes sense.
I'm good.
Well, cool. Well, I know you had on your topics the tornado confirmed in Irving. I don't know, since we were talking about weather, did you want to kick off with that? If not, I got some stuff I can kick off with. Or
I mean, we kind of already touched on it. So we can just kind of move on to whatever else.
Yeah. I'll get started off with something that really isn't like a main topic, but anyone that's used X over the last week and a half, they probably saw their timeline flooded with some JD Vance images. I don't know. Did you notice this at all? Did you look at X throughout the past week at all?
I didn't really see a whole lot of them.
Okay,
I was
well,
on and browsing, but I didn't see a lot. So
all good. Ever since the Zelensky and Trump butting of heads about a week and a half, almost 2 weeks ago now, people have been taking JD Vance's face and putting it on other memeable things. And basically, over the last week, and I'll show some examples of what this looks like. They've been flooding everybody's timeline, so much so that like it escalated to the point where like JD Vance himself, Vice President of the United States, kind of noticed it, and he's like, "I see what you're doing out there." You can see like right here, this is usually not JD Vance's face on this, but to show some examples of what I'm talking about here. Thankfully, someone made a top 20 funniest JD Vance memes thus far. Now there's countless others out there from what I'm about to show y'all here. So obviously you have Vance Halen with all the Vances. Someone took a fat JD Vance and basically made him like the Willy Wonka character that eats the, I forget what it is. Is it the
Violet
blueberries?
Beauregard.
Yeah, see, you know the name. You even know the name. Another kind of version of that. You have JD Vance is AOC.
Oh, that's just disturbing.
You have JD Vance is George Floyd. You have JD Vance memes on Mount Rushmore. JD Vance as the Sphere in Las Vegas. JD Vance as Bob Ross painting a meme of JD Vance.
Oh my gosh.
JD Vance as, I think, I'm trying to remember who this is. I'm trying to remember. For some reason, I'm drawing a blank. But anyways, a member of Congress or the Senate potentially. Bald JD Vance. JD Vance is Kevin Smith doing that shrug meme that kind of got famous. You have JD Vance behind Kash Patel, new director of the FBI.
Speaking of Kash Patel, man's been going in on some people.
Yes, he has. Got JD Vance's Gatsby. JD Vance is the fire girl meme. Kind of got JD Vance doing the John Cena face thing going on there. And there's countless others. But like, and even people made like a JD Vance CAPTCHA check with different memes from the, so it's hard to trace back exactly like how this started and what really happened with it. But people really dug in. So like really quick, here is JD Vance as different US presidents. So you have JD Vance as George Washington. JD Vance is JD Adams. JD Jefferson. JD Madison. JD Monroe. Quincy Adams. And so on and so forth. Like, you get the idea. So somehow JD Vance's face has taken over social media, at least in terms of the overall meme game. So not really like a topic, just I was more curious, like if you saw that this past week or not. But the main topic, though, I kind of want to throw your way is, I guess, kind of good news, bad news, depending on where, I feel like I know where you sit on the situation. Others may be sitting on another side of the fence, but word on the street is we may be due for a legitimate economic correction period. Not only in the stock market, but the housing market as well. And I've been seeing this theory starting to float around that this might be something that the Trump administration may actually want to facilitate in order to help the United States become more healthy from a fiscal perspective. And I'll explain what I mean by that. But I want to kind of kick off with this image here of, this is a chart of price to sales ratio. So meaning the price of stocks on the stock market in comparison with the overall sales of the companies that those stocks, make up, of those that are within the S&P 500 Information Technology Index. And so just want to kick this off with a little comparison here. You can see we are at an all-time high, at least as of December 31st, 2024. And if you look at the prior peaks and valleys, they're pretty recognizable points in time. You have the post 2020 COVID correctional period. You can see a correctional period around 2008, 2010. And then the granddaddy of them all, the one we're probably most familiar with in terms of big correctional periods, is the 2000 .com bubble pop. So just a visual to kind of kick us off here is in terms of stocks are a little overvalued right now in terms of how much a stock is worth versus how much that company is producing in terms of overall sales. Now, one thing I'm about to read through here, I've been hearing this narrative tossed around from a few different, I guess, talking heads, different independent journalist sources. And it's weird to say this makes a lot of sense. To sum up what I'm about to dive into here is that the Trump administration recognizes that the U.S. has about $9.2 trillion worth of U.S. debt that is ready to mature or be refinanced within 2025. And where interest rates are set currently, it is not in our financial interest to refinance or pay off the debt at the rate that interest is at the moment. So how do we, refinance this at a lower interest rate? Because interest rates are going to be set by the Fed, which is technically separate from the federal government, right? A lot of people often think the Fed, which sets interest rates, is one and the same with our federal government. Well, surprise, surprise, they are two separate entities. So the Kobayashi letter here says, does the US government want a recession? In 2025, $9.2 trillion worth of US debt will either mature or need to be refinanced. Now, the quickest way to lower rates ahead of this colossal refinancing would be a recession. Could the US benefit from a market crash? Over the last 2 months, the 10-year note, which we all know and love, the 10-year note also has a correlation with interest rates for the housing market. So over the last 2 months, the 10-year note yield has fallen around 60 basis points. This is partially due to anticipation of the Department of Government Efficiency, a DOGE, the deficit spending cuts they made. But it's also due to increased uncertainty and rising odds of a U.S. recession. A recession would almost guarantee rate cuts. Why would a recession guarantee lower rates? Every U.S. recession dating back to the 1980s followed a peak in the Fed funds rate. When economic growth stalls, the Fed stimulates the economy. This means lowering interest rates to lower costs of capital and promote overall spending. So we can see there's a chart here. Every recession followed a peak in Fed funds rates. So we can see right before 2020, right around 2008, right after the 2000 .com bubble, in right in the late 80s leading into the early 90s. Now, since the trade war began, which I know you have this one of your topics, so we can dive into that next after this if you want. Since the trade war began, economic growth forecasts in the U.S. have cratered. Oil prices have also cratered to a fresh 6th-month low. Here's where it gets even more interesting. President Trump has said multiple times he wants lower oil prices for lower inflation. Now, on January 25th, President Trump claimed to have a solution to the Fed's 3+ year battle against inflation. He demanded the OPEC lower oil prices and the world drop interest rates. However, the quickest way to lower oil prices would be a recession, which reduces demand. It says, take a look at President Trump's most recent interview with Fox News. He comments on his priority of getting interest rates down. Quote, interest rates are going down, and I'd love to see energy go down, he says. Now, take a look at the inflation data next. First, I'm going to play this video just real quick.
But you may get it again with these tariffs, right? I mean, one CEO said to me, my input costs have already started to go up. I'm going to have to raise prices.
In the meantime, guess what? Interest rates are down for the last 3-4 days at good levels. I mean, you know, when you add interest rates, you're talking about it's gone down. I've been saying, let's get interest rates down. You know, nobody ever gets rich when the interest rates are high because people can't borrow money. Interest rates are going down. You know what else is going down? What have I been trying to get down? Energy. Energy's going down. I'd love to see energy go down. You know, energy is really what caused it. They screwed up my energy. I had the most energy, and they screwed it up. Then they went back to it. It was going through the roof. They went back to some drilling, but it was gone. It was hopeless. It was lost. But energy's gone down, and interest rates have gone up over the last week. That's a big thing.
Goes on to say, U.S. consumers believe inflation will rise to 6+% over the next 12 months, the highest since May 2023. This marks the third consecutive monthly increase in expectations. Inflation is rising, rate cuts were delayed, but rates are falling. Markets are pricing in a recession. Now, in a trade war with surging inflation, drastically lower rates are almost impossible without a recession. And to top it off, President Trump said on March 6th that he's not even watching the stock market. As we saw in his first term, Trump is always watching the stock market. President Trump's statement on, quote unquote, not watching the market was telling. While he clearly is watching the market, it was his way of telling Wall Street a message. He is willing to do whatever it takes to lower rates and reduce the trade deficit, even if it involves a recession. Now, amid all the trade war chaos, we have seen economic growth expectations crash sharply. The Atlanta Fed reduced their Q1 2025 GDP growth estimate to as low as negative 2.8% as of last week. As a result, we saw interest rates cut expectations move up sharply last week. Was this intentional? High interest rates are the US government's biggest problem. Debt service costs have soared with the surge in interest rates. The average interest rate on $36.2 trillion of Treasury debt is now 3.2%, the highest since 2010. The US government needs rate cuts more than anyone else. And it's urgent rates drop soon. The maturity schedule for the $9.2 trillion of US debt is heavily weighted to the front half of 2025. Between January and June of 2025, 70% of it will need to be refinanced. The average rate on this debt is set to jump by about 1 percentage point. Furthermore, Department of Government efficiency efforts to reduce deficit spending won't happen overnight. In fiscal year 2024, the U.S. saw $7.8 trillion in gross costs and just around $5 trillion in revenue. That's $1.56 trillions of costs of every $1 of revenue that the U.S. generates. The debt crisis will take years to fix. Lastly, this brings us back to 2023 when the Fed almost began calling for a recession to lower inflation. In February 2023, many studies indicated a recession may be the only solution. The Fed then ran with the quote-unquote soft landing narrative, which is still failing to lower rates. The reality is that the U.S. debt crisis is the biggest crisis with the least attention. President Trump has realized this, but it may be too late. A recession may be the only solution for lower rates. Now, there were a lot of people talking about this. Anthony Popliano, a lot of people are aware of him. Maybe we aren't on this podcast, but very active in finance, especially with Bitcoin and crypto. But he posted on X saying, Trump told Jerome Powell, who runs the Fed, to cut interest rates. Jerome Powell didn't do it. Now Trump is trying to force Powell to cut interest rates by crashing asset prices, i.e. the stock market, the housing market. We will see who blinks first. Anthony's not the only one. Legendary hedge fund manager Ray Dalio is warning of a U.S. debt crisis heart attack within the next 3 years to reduce the deficit. Now, something kind of related, somewhat unrelated, but I thought was interesting just to kind of put the cherry on the top here. Let's look at some correlations with the housing market here. Construction jobs are starting to fall. Now, correlation doesn't always mean causation, but the last time we saw these jobs start to teeter off and decline and fall, Riley, do you see what year, what span of years that shows on here? It's right around 2008, culminating off with around 2010, 2011, when it finally started to make a comeback. So I'm not saying I know anything that I'm talking about at all. I just like to see what other people are saying and trying to digest it as much as possible. But it is interesting because we do know the U.S. has a lot of debt. We've talked about it on this podcast before. It's a silly high number to even think about to begin with. But we do know the first half of this year, they got to refinance that. And they don't like where rates are at the point that they would need to refinance. So how else do you get the Fed to lower rates? You crash the stock market. You crash the housing market. I'm not saying it's going to happen.
I don't want to sound like a broken record because I keep going back to this almost every single week. And granted, I don't understand every aspect of, the stock market or, the Fed or whatever it is. In my career field, people would expect me to, but there's going to be some information that's just going to fall through the cracks because there's so much information developing every single day. First of all, interest rates could be dropping and be the best that they've been for 4 days, but that still doesn't change the fact that an average 30-year rate is still about 6.8%.
Yeah.
So, cool, rates are down for 3 to 4 days. That means absolutely nothing. That means nothing to anybody. The other fact of the matter is it baffles me. Again, I don't understand, the whole debt and as far as we keep printing money. I don't understand, aside from the money that we've borrowed from other countries, how are we technically in debt that much if we can just continue printing money? I mean, granted, I guess that devalues the dollar, the currency that we use here, which is why, change is just so devalued so much, because money kept getting printed and circulated and everything like that. In my mind, though, I'm like, why can't they just aside from the debt that we owe the other countries, why can't they just wipe it clean? Because the money's somewhere, and it's not in the pockets of the American people, so it's somewhere. Where's it going? The last thing is, it doesn't matter if they crash the stock market and we hit a recession. That doesn't matter. And I say that confidently because you can crash the stock market all you want, but people don't make enough money still. That's the thing. You can crash it all you want, and you're doing it purposefully so that people will borrow money. But yet the average credit card debt that people have in each household is about $11,000. That's the average credit card debt that consumers have. So yeah, you could crash the market. They could refi their rate probably and get a lower rate, lower payments, all that kind of stuff. Cool. It still doesn't mean that people aren't making it. Still means that people aren't making enough money though. They could afford that payment. Cool. They could afford it more. Cool. But that means that they're going to be more susceptible to borrowing more money, to doing the other things that they're saying that they want us to do, but it's keeping people in debt. Trump said something in that video when he was like, you can't get rich if you can't afford anything or something like that. He mentioned becoming rich, essentially.
Yeah.
That means absolutely nothing to the average American worker if home prices are still averaging $380,000 nationally. Like that's actually, no, it's higher than that. And I think it's like $416,000 now. Like that's
It's
the
something,
average.
yeah.
That's the average home price now. Nobody who makes less than $100,000 a year, unless you're just super, super tight with your money, you're not paying that. Like you're not making that mortgage payment with the current rates now. So you can crash the market all you want. And I implore someone to educate me on this, but unless you can show me where all the higher paying jobs are at that people are somehow getting or having, or when they say like, and I saw that you had a topic on here about the Houston Apple facility, new AI server factory to bring thousands of jobs. Okay, are they really bringing thousands of jobs, or are they saying they're bringing thousands of jobs and then they're actually not going to have the jobs available, or they're like they're saying they're going to hire people but they're really not going to hire the people? Like when they post jobs out there, don't just post the jobs to catfish people and then not hire them and say you're trying to hire people. You want to get money circulated back into the economy. These jobs need to actively hire people and pay people what they're worth, and they have the money to. They can quit BSing people. All these multi-billion-dollar companies, you have the money to pay people. Quit saying you don't, so that the rich can stay rich and the poor can just stay the poor people. And I don't like using the word poor, but it's like when you're like the middle class just doesn't exist anymore. I feel like there's no such thing as a middle class anymore. Like you're either up here or you're down here. Like there's no in between anymore. I'm sorry to say, but there's just not. And again, I implore anyone who studies this more than me to please educate me on this if I'm wrong. But based on what I've looked at and based on things that I've researched, there's no, like, I don't think there's a such thing as a middle class anymore. They have phased the middle class completely out of the market as for just any market that you're in. That you're up here and you're making 6 figures a year, or you're down here and you're making like low 5 figures. And that's like the bare minimum. Like, I think the average household income is still, which it's funny because I see people talk about this. I see like these like, not real estate gurus, but they're people that are like very financially like well off, but they tell people about different aspects of how to invest your money, how to do this, how to do this. They say that the average household income is like $48,000 a year. That if you make that $48,000 a year, you're already in the 1% of the people like in the world. You're already in the 1% because of how much people don't make. I find that hard to believe because it's like if I'm in the 1%, but I can still barely afford to pay my bills, how does that put me in the 1%?
Well, yeah, no, you statistically, I don't know about the 48,000. That sounds correct. I don't know off the top of my head.
Like
if
48 or 50,000, something like that. But anyways,
yeah,
go ahead.
because if you look at the world's population, like, yeah, you would be in the 1%. Think about, okay, so like the U.S. has like what, 365 million people, something like that.
Something like that. It's almost 370 at this point.
Put China and India's population together, we're in the billions now, right?
Yeah.
And then you throw in the entire continent of Africa. You throw in the entire continent of South America.
Yeah.
Europe is a tiny well, Europe's not a tiny population, but
compared to
like Asia is a continent.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, very tiny population.
Right.
So like statistically, yes. But then you have problems where like, yeah, you're in the 1% globally, but you're also living in a top, I'm going to throw out a statistic. I don't know if this is mathematically correct, but you're like in one of the top 10 least affordable parts of the world. And what I mean by that is like Dallas, Fort Worth. Like Dallas, Fort Worth is affordable, quote unquote, in terms of like overall, but like it's not Lincoln, Nebraska. It's not Zimbabwe. It's not, Buenos Aires. Like it's not these other places where the US dollar goes a lot further.
Yeah. Or was it Brownsville, Texas, I think was like one of the cheapest places to live.
Yeah.
Like you could buy a house for like $170,000 down there, but there's a reason why you can, because
you have low job prospects. There's not that many. There are stuff to do. Don't get me wrong, but there's not that much going on there in comparison,
And so that's kind of where like my understanding is like, again, you could crash the market all you want and people could lose money, or the people who are doing the insider trading because they're doing it. Let's quit pretending that they're not, because they're doing it.
Yeah, Nancy Pelosi has her husband has an incredible track record with stock picks. Like, and there's a few other senators out there that are as well.
And so if you see all of them start pulling their money out, and then the stock market crashes, y'all should not be excited that the market is crashing, because then you can refi your stuff. You should be mad at the people who shouldn't have net worths in the billions, who only make a couple $100,000 a year. Like, compared to for where they live at, that's enough for them to live on, is a couple $100,000 a year. Because in Washington D.C., like, you're going to spend a lot of money on housing, you're going to spend a lot of money on amenities, food, whatever the case may be. That's enough for them to live on. But the fact that they are billionaires, or their net worth is in the billions, should not be a thing. I don't care how long you've been in government or politics or whatever the case it may be. Like, again, it all falls back to they say that they're creating jobs. They say that these, like, oh, we created hundreds of thousands of jobs. Really, what you did is all the jobs that were shut down in the previous presidency, you're just reopening those jobs back up. So what's going to happen if, and I hate to say it, what's going to happen if we get another Democrat back in office and the Democrats take back over? Guess what? All those hundreds of thousands of jobs that you discovered are going to go away again, because the Democrats are going to see that they're not needed, when in retrospect they really are. If you really want to put money back into the economy, businesses need to flourish, and not just your multi-billion-dollar businesses that have flourished for the past 50 to 60 years because they got started during an era when nothing else was abundant. Businesses that are now starting that can become something great for the future, you're shutting them down, and you're not allowing that money to flow into the economy like it should. If that was to happen, I don't think we would be in the position that we are right now. But so many people just they don't have their own infrastructure set enough so that they can afford what they need to afford. And it sucks. It honestly sucks. And that's just where our country is at. And I'll be honest, the whole tariffs thing, I feel like he could have gone a different way with it. And I can go ahead and honestly just get into it. But the whole tariff thing. So as y'all know, Trump put tariffs on Mexico, China, Canada. I think he paused the one for Canada. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure the one for Mexico and China still.
It's been pretty volatile. It's difficult to follow, because like one day you're like, okay, it's gonna go on Mexico, it's gonna go on Canada. I think China's for sure.
Yeah.
But then like I think he paused Mexico.
Yeah.
I think that's what it was, because the president of Mexico was like, okay, we'll play ball.
Yeah.
But then like by the time this comes out, I'm sure it's changed again. So.
Right. So take all this with a grain of salt for any of you all who are listening, but I'm going to go ahead and throw this up here. So this is talking about China and talking about their trade war. Now, let me preface by saying this, that when it comes to the tariffs and everything, again, he probably could have gone about it a different way. A lot of people are saying like, oh, he's doing everything in Project 2025. All this stuff's happening. Cool. Whatever. Are y'all really that freaking surprised that a president's doing exactly what they said they wouldn't do? Like, every president for the last like 30 years has done that. So like, what's new here? But also too, he probably could have, instead of putting tariffs on these other countries, instead of doing that, he could have done what he said that he wanted to do. I think he said this during the election process, was he wanted to just bring some of the infrastructure and the factory aspect, manufacturing back to this country, so that we're not having to ship goods from other countries. We can actually legitimately create the jobs here, and not just say like, oh, we lost these jobs. No, legitimately create these jobs here, and let us, like, I'm not saying still not help other countries, but like, we can actually have our own infrastructure growing back to what it was. And like, there's some things that we can't get here. Like, don't get me wrong, Canada and Mexico, they account for quite a huge percentage of things that we get. But when it comes to China, we have to get stuff shipped from overseas. Like, some stuff might be needed to get shipped from overseas, but things that could be kept here in our country that could actually be ran as a manufacturing aspect, we could have brought those back. And therefore you could have saved on the tariffs and not have started this whole trade war thing. Now we would have had some goods back in our country that we could produce here, because we know we can do it. I don't know why they're messing around on that, because we know we can do it. And you can still have the good trade aspects, or not even a high tariff. If you're going to do tariffs, just do 5-10%. Like, don't do anything crazy like 25%, buddy. Like, because now what people don't understand, and a lot of people may actually understand this, this is actually going to cause inflation to go up because we're charging them what they're charging us. So guess what? These other countries are going to be charging us more now to get the goods. And guess what these other places are going to have to do themselves? They're going to have to charge more. And so at the end of the day, but to get into this, as again, going back to China, Trump imposed, I think it was a 25% tariff on China. Well, China imposed a 15% on the U.S., covering cotton and agricultural goods, including chicken, corn, and soybeans. These are a direct response to the opening salvo tariffs by U.S. President Donald Trump, who will add a 25% levy on aluminum imports to his protectionist roster on Wednesday. Unlike the on-again, off-again battle with the neighbors Mexico and Canada, these tariffs look likely to stick. So a lot of people were, wonder what was going on. Same as what we just mentioned. Kind of just one day we hear one thing and then another thing we hear. This one looks like it's actually going to stick out. Trump's claims that his trade wars will only cause a little disturbance looks optimistic to say the least, because the usual factors that contain such outbreaks do not appear to be playing out this time, as the Financial Times columnist and trade secrets writer Alan Betty explains. While all this tit-for-tat economic skirmish plays out, Britain will host a church service on Monday at Westminster Abbey, the annual gathering to celebrate trade and mutual cooperation among the 56 member nations of the Commonwealth. Of course, this post-Empire Club is far from easy coalition, so there may be the kind of fireworks the host would prefer to do without. Again, it talks about other countries as well. So as far as like these other countries, I don't know exactly what Trump is planning on doing with them. Again, it mentions them here. It talks about there's also a concern about relations between the current owners of Denmark and the U.S., because we talked about it a couple months ago that Trump was trying to get Greenland and all this other kind of stuff. So again, nothing else has developed from that to our knowledge, or to my knowledge at least.
It is crazy to think like we haven't heard too much about Greenland recently. I feel like it was a big talking point, and then it just other things happen. So it makes me wonder.
He might have just been talking just to talk. So
he might have been. He does that.
Focus on that instead of focusing on what he's actually doing, so he could push it through.
Yeah.
Again, the biggest portion of this is the China and America, or the U.S. Tariffs. Again, the Mexico and Canada ones haven't really taken effect yet, because the whole aspect of that. Now it's funny because Canada's already started to take like U.S. products off their shelves. Like they're talking about that. Canada's also I don't know if they're in talks with the U.S., but they're trying to figure out how to was it Lake Erie, I think?
Or yeah, they
Lake
wanted
Michigan?
to renegotiate the Great Lakes.
Yeah.
And then also they wanted to Trump threatened something about I'm drawing a blank on the number, but it's the parallel that delineates the border between the U.S. and Canada.
Yeah.
Was it the I forget the number, the 84th, 54th? Those numbers are ringing in my head. I'm sure it's blatantly wrong. But he was kind of joking about like, maybe we should revisit what the border, like the actual geographical border between the two countries are, because who knows if there's like some weird loophole or way to get out of whatever that original treaty was set up to be like. Also kind of relevant to this happened today, this evening, actually, as of recording. Canada's going to have a new prime minister. The Liberal Party of Canada, I was going to pull it up because I already forgot his name. Mark Carney, or Carney.
Oh, yeah, I heard about that.
Yeah, he's going to be the new prime minister of Canada. So like Trudeau's days are actually numbered at this point too. So it'll be interesting. He's already on record saying that Canada's going to remain strong. We're not going to be bullied. The whole, I get it. Rah, rah. It's like he's leading a country. Like that's what you need to do if you're the leader of the country.
But it's like, if I hate saying this, but it's like, if we wanted to, we could just take what we wanted. I'm not saying that I'm on board with that, because again, we should love our neighbors as ourselves. That's what it talks about in scripture. But yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see what's going to happen.
And just real quick, one thing that's interesting about Mark Carney. So someone was kind of looking at like what was his past before he became the new Prime Minister of Canada? So Mark Carney was governor of the Bank of Canada from February 2008 to June 2013. Then he became the governor of the Bank of England from July 2013 to March 2020. To give us a little bit of an example more relevant to home, this would be as if Jerome Powell, who runs the Fed, it would be like if Powell became the unelected president of the United States in 2026. So it's interesting how Mark Carney's prior professional experience involves being the governor of not only the Bank of England, but the Bank of Canada. And so it's interesting that he is now being picked to lead the country of Canada. Now, keep this in mind with the whole potential economic recession on the horizon and why he would be the optimal person to be in charge of Canada, or at least be their prime minister throughout these turbulent times ahead. Something to think about. Could be just a fun little coincidence. But makes you wonder.
I don't know. I really don't. Like, and that's the thing that sucks again, because we can speculate all we want, but we don't really know what they're actually going to do themselves, which sucks. But again, I stand my ground. It's like they can do whatever it is they want to do, but until they actually start creating jobs that are not, like, I get that you have to have some jobs that are, in a sense, low-paying jobs, but those should not be career-type jobs. And I get not everyone has the money to go to college, which that's another topic for another day, that colleges should not be a money grab. I stand firm on that if you're going for a 4-year degree, you should not have to retake the same classes that you took in high school again as a basic for your college degree. You shouldn't have to. But not everyone has the money to go to college, and people can't, like, again, with the whole student loan debacle and all that stuff, like, that's still happening. It's still being talked about. People can't afford their student loan payments. There's actually people who just aren't even paying their loans right now. Like, they're just like, you know what? I'm not paying this. Like, so what if my credit gets tanked? Like, I can't afford this right now. I care more about my livelihood than I do a student loan. Respect. Like, I get it. Like, I'm still fortunate that I can afford the loans that I have. Do I want to pay them? Not particularly, but that's just the way the cookie crumbles on that. But again, until they create more jobs that could be career-based jobs that are not low paying, and those are jobs that you can work in a career and actually get pay raises as you go, and not those like, okay, we're going to pay you the bare minimum. We're going to keep you there for as long as we can. And the only way to get a pay raise is to find a new job in that same career field. That should not be how things work.
I think one thing that's interesting, I hear this more and more as the years progress, especially post 2020, that we've overcompensated or overbalanced our workforce to be, quote, like college educated white collar workers. So we have this issue, and I know you're aware of this. I'm probably preaching to the choir with most people, where we had generations of students be told that you have to go get a college degree to be successful in life, to be successful in business, to make a living, make a way for yourself in this world. And we almost had a problem of too many people going to college and coming out with these silly degrees that had nothing to do with what the workforce required or asked for. And now we're kind of seeing this rise of, and I have a headline from the Wall Street Journal here saying America's new millionaire class, plumbers and HVAC entrepreneurs, saying private equity is pouring money into skilled trade small businesses, saying the next thing you know, you're running an empire. So it's interesting to see that we almost sent too many kids to go get white collar jobs. There weren't enough white collar jobs to fill with those silly degrees they got. And people forgot to say, hey, you can go become a tradesman. And that's a totally rational, reasonable path to take in life. And since we've started to have a shortage of tradesmen and tradeswomen, that it's now extremely lucrative to go become an HVAC technician, to go become a plumber, to become an electrician, to become a carpenter, these jobs that require your hands and your brain. And
weird how that's the job that you can make them up. But people don't want, I have to work with my hands. I have to get my hands dirty. I have to do this. Like, would you rather be making $50,000 a year because you can't get a job with a degree that you thought was going to get you a job, but you pulled out $100,000 of student loan debt, now you can't pay that degree off? Or would you rather go pay enough to get some certifications and then you get trained in the job that you're working in, and the people that are training you in that job that own the business that you're working for don't expect you to work in that field with them? They expect you to go start your own business eventually because that's what they're training you to do. Weird.
Yeah, it's like you have a situation where someone goes and gets a humanities degree. Let's just say they go get their master's in philosophy, and then 5 years later, they just happen to be working the drive-through at a Starbucks. And it's like, working the drive-through at a Starbucks is totally fine. And Starbucks actually pays relatively well in comparison to that type of a job.
Yeah.
Not saying it's a livable wage, but it's good in comparison. But it's not good for those that went and got a master's degree and now have that burden of like, hey, you got to pay this thing off at some point because the only way to get rid of it's dying.
And that's why like I'm trying to teach myself like additional trade skills. I'm trying to teach myself like, again, graphic design, like all these different things that will benefit me that I could utilize to either start like small businesses, and then maybe like the plan for me is to not have to actually run the businesses, but I can hire people to do the businesses for me so that I don't have to do it, but I'm going to pay them a livable wage. So like that's the goal. But right now it's like, the housing market sucks. Like new builds are getting a lot of attraction, but again, it still sucks though, because people, I just don't want it to get to a situation again where people are just going to pull out mortgages and then 4 years later they come to collect because rates go up or whatever the case happens and people can't afford the payment anymore. That sucks. But when it comes to those types of jobs, though, like I thought about going into like HVAC tech and stuff like that. Like I thought about it. Why not? But it's just, I don't know. It's a lot of additional time. It's a lot of additional money that I just don't have. That I can't do it right now. But I mean, for those of you who think going to college is because, it's the best thing ever because your parents told you, or because your high school told you, or because of this or that, I'm going to be 100% honest with you. There's probably more than two choices, but the first choice, join the military. They'll pay for your college. There you go. You just have to sacrifice the next 8 to 10 years of your life. If not longer, depending on what you do.
But there's also so many benefits that come out of that. One thing I meant to say, and sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
No, you're good.
One thing I meant to bring up earlier when you were talking about the dissolvement of the middle class, or the lack thereof these days, that's one thing that's very interesting to go back and study, is the creation of the middle class in the United States, because that's something that set the United States apart from the rest of the world. Was we had a strong middle class there for so long, whereas other countries either never did, or they had such a small, minute equivalent of that it was kind of irrelevant to their day-to-day economic situation. But a lot of the middle class came out of those vets from World War II, Vietnam, Korea, because they were given the GI Bill. They were given reasonable home mortgage options, healthcare options. Like it set them up in a different way that just other people weren't able to find a path in. So it's something interesting that something that we were so good at creating, we've also destroyed at the same time.
And that all came because of greed. I'll be honest with you, the politicians are literally, like, people could say whatever they want about them. Politicians are the root of the evil that is in this country. It is because of the politicians that the things that are happening here, because they're not for the people. And the thing is like, I'm not saying like, oh, let's start a revolution. Like, I'm not saying anything like that, but it's like these people that got in office that are still there for I don't even know how, because it's like, there's no elections to elect anyone else to put in those positions. They are still there. I'm sorry, but you should not have a person that got elected in the 1940s still in office in any kind of form in our politics. They should not be there.
Well, the wild thing is, I mean, there's ways to keep them accountable. Just us, I say us very loosely, like the population. just
don't know
seems
how.
to not. So the way this is a fun thing I always like to joke about or to poke fun at with some of my friends in the Austin area. We know Austin leans a lot more blue than the rest of the state.
Oh yeah.
And so it's
So does
always,
Dallas.
yeah. And so a lot of people love to poke fun at Ted Cruz, one of the 2 senators from the state of Texas.
Mm-hmm.
And they love to say how evil, how bad, how terrible he is. Like why, like they say, why is he the senator representing the state of Texas, right? My whole question is, if he was so bad, why do people keep voting for him? That's how he gets in. He's not forcing his way in there, right?
No.
It's an election. Senators have terms, and both him and Cornyn have both been serving. I think. Oh, I mean, how long has Cruz
Ted Cruz has been serving since like
2012? Maybe
I think it's like 2012, because they have 2-year terms, right?
No, 6 year.
Oh, 6 years. Okay, so yeah. So he's been,
the Senate's supposed to keep things more stable. Congress is every 4 years. We're going back to civics class here, and I'm gonna feel so embarrassed if I get this wrong. Congress has 4-year terms. Senate has 6 years, and they have rotating. So that way, Congress. That's why they call it the People's House, because Congress has representation based on the population size of the state, whereas there's always 2 senators. The Senate's supposed to keep things relatively more stable over the long term, which is why you have the longer terms. Because think about it, in Congress, if everyone got replaced, just think about how you got to have some carryover, right? You got to have people that at least know where the bathroom is in the building. Like you got to have people that just like know where things are, right? And so there's you got a little bit of consistency, but also over time you replace people if they're not doing the job that their voting populace thinks they should be doing. And so that's my whole thing is we're so upset with those that represent us. Well, how come we don't vote them out? I know there's reasons. I know people either don't vote or they vote. They follow the herd mentality and they check a box and they do straight ballot voting on one side or the other. And so they vote for people that they're not even aware who they are. But there's ways that, if you don't like what someone's doing, just vote for the other person.
I think it's not even just that, but we don't have and this, I could be totally wrong in this. I could 100%. I've met one dude. Do you know who Brandon Gill is?
That name sounds so familiar.
He was a young Congress. I think he's in Congress. No, but hold on, let me see here. Brandon Gill. Yeah, he's a U.S. representative here in Texas.
Interesting.
Or for Texas, I think. I met him in person. I met the student in person at a networking event. At one point, I thought about in the early stages of our podcast, I was like, maybe we can get him on here. What?
I'm just looking. I just got to laugh at this for a second. I'm sure he's a great guy. This is not his fault at all. But look at his congressional district. It's all but where we know the liberal universities are in Denton. It's just kind of funny that it's that is such a wild district. I know there's so many crazy districts that get gerrymandered in Texas, but this is perfect for someone who is trying to get voted in Republican.
Yeah. So he's not that much older than either of us. He's 31. You might actually be older than him by a month. No, his February 26, 1994.
Oh, that's wild. I am older than him.
Yeah, so you're older than him by a little bit.
What have I done with my life? Why is my hair so long? What am I doing?
Anyways, so I met him in person at a networking event last year. I think it was last summer or spring, something like that. Actually, a pretty cool dude, stand-up guy. He actually has some good values as far as, and we chatted. I was like, dude, I'm pretty sure I actually voted for him in the local stuff as well, because I was I liked what he had to say. We chatted a bit. Well, it was this is kind of where I'm going with this point. I have not seen a single, and this might be because I don't pay attention to the broader scale of things, I have not seen a young person running for any kind of office most recently.
There's definitely some of them out there. I'll say that.
But we don't have anyone. I think that's why a lot of these older people are still staying in office. Because while I agree with you that we have to have like the people that know where things are at, people that know what's going on and stuff like that. While I agree with that, because we don't have people who, and for those of you who don't know, that I'm just going to share my screen. This is Brandon Gill, 31 years old. For reference, I'm 29, about to turn 30. My co-host here is 31. We don't have young people to fill into the next generation. Like we legitimately have career politicians, and that should not ever be a thing. Politicians are not made to be career-based jobs. Like that's not supposed to be that's not what that's for. You're meant to represent the people and their interests and their best interests, and then continue on after that to then pass it to the next person. Unless you happen to win an additional term, like that's awesome. But you should be working for the sole purpose of then passing what your work has done onto the next person, but not in a bad faith kind of way. Like don't corrupt things and then hand that off to somebody else, but legitimately work for the benefit of the people. Because we don't have people like him, and I've brought this up before, I legitimately thought about running, and there's actually some open seats for council in the city of Denton. I thought about doing it, but I ain't got the time for that. I just don't have the time. Now, I just might not be ready enough. Maybe once I kind of get a little bit more like knowledge and, I do some research, look some stuff up. Now that goes without saying, you have to have money to run as well. You have to have people endorsing you. You have to give people a reason to endorse you, to vote for you. And you have to have people that are willing to put money up to do that. I ain't got that kind of money to do that. So that's where I'm kind of like stuck at. It doesn't matter if it's for city council or not. Things are where they are, and I don't even really know I don't know enough about politics to be like, vote for me, because I don't want to do a disservice to people. But until we get people that are actually young and hungry and they want to actually try to do what's best for moving forward, we're going to keep going around in circles. We're going to legitimately keep going around in circles. Okay, cool. Let's have a recession. Cool. That's going to last for like 3 years, 4 years, and then we're going to be right back to where we are. Let's come up with something new here. Let's do something new as a population. Honestly, I feel like I'm not saying it's any particular age group's fault, but I feel like the older generations are just kind of like, we're going to die soon anyways. We don't care. So they're just going to vote for whoever they want to vote for and then call it a day. Meanwhile, us young people are stuck with the mess that they have left for us. It's nobody's fault, but because housing prices and everything was so cheap back then, we're kind of just, I'm not saying we're screwed, but unless something changes, who knows what's going to happen? Legitimately, who knows what's going to happen? They can speculate and say whatever they want, but who knows what's going to happen? So,
yeah. If you want, real quick, let me share my screen because you bring up a good point. Just the age distribution of members of the House and the Senate. This is as of 2023. So some of this might have changed slightly, but the overall theme here remains true is, for those of you in audio land, have a chart here of age 20 through 80 plus, and it's a bar chart, and it kind of shows here a bar for the House, which is kind of this purple, dark purple, and then the Senate, which is more the red, orangey color here. And you can see age 20 to 29, the Senate almost literally potentially no representation at all. The House has a little bit, which I was looking into that. I was just asking ChatGPT a couple questions about who are the youngest members of the House and the Senate. So in the House of Representatives, we got 5 people, kind of the youngest here. We have Maxwell Frost, a Democrat out of Florida, born in 1997, first elected in 2022 at the age of 25, becoming the first Generation Z member of Congress. We have Brandon Gill, who we just spoke to, a Republican from Texas. We have Addison McDowell, a Republican from North Carolina, also age 30, I believe, potentially could be 31 by this time, but still one of the youngest members of the House. And we have Yasemin Ansari, apologies if I mispronounced that, a Democrat from Arizona at age 32. Ansari is the youngest woman in the 119th Congress and the first Iranian-American Democrat elected to the House. And then in the Senate, which definitely skews much older, that we can see from this graph here, We have John Ossoff, a Democrat from Georgia, born in 1987. We have Katie Britt, a Republican from Alabama, born in 1982. And Andy Kim, a Democrat from New Jersey, age 42. Also became the first Korean American senator in November 2024, making him the third youngest member of the Senate at age 42, which is crazy to be the third youngest member and you're still 42, which 42 in comparison to what we're seeing on this chart does skew on the younger side. But to your point, need more of that. Honestly, 30 plus. I'm all for having a small number of members in that 20 to 29 bracket, but I think that 30 to 45 segment right there, you've lived enough life. You've seen a couple of presidential terms. I think that's the key. You need to live through more in when I say your adult life, I mean age 16 plus, right?
Yeah.
Because that's when you start to kind of understand.
Honestly, I'd even go far as to say like 17 or 18. Like 16 to me is just still too.
Yeah.
Like you should have to be able to vote first before you can even start to comprehend, because at that, like, you're still impressionable, very much so, by your peers in school, whatever the case. But I will say this, I agree with that point. I will say, the 20 to 29 range, like, at least on that upper side, like not any closer to the 20 range. But I'd probably say on the 30s is probably where we need. Again, I thought about it, but I wouldn't even know where to begin, and I don't even have anyone to endorse me, things like that. And it's also too,
we're both still so young in the grand scheme of this thing. Like, you never know, like, what the next decade,
I'm going
next
for
20,
president.
You never, like, if we look back, I'm not gonna pull it back up, but you see how old some of those people are. Some of those people were just getting into office too. So it's like, dude, you got the rest of your life ahead of you. You never know.
Well, that's also too kind of where I'm like, so you can't run for president until you're 35.
Yeah,
valid. That's valid. Okay, I would assume that you'd have to have some. I say this, but Trump really didn't have any political backstanding, and he got elected twice. But you probably have to have some sort of political backstanding, like as far as like, hey, I know what I'm talking about. I know what I'm doing here.
You almost need a trial run before you need like a trial run doing something in politics before you're like, I'm leading the country.
Right. But I feel like when it comes to presidency, Senate, House, anything politician wise, the same retirement should apply to you, meaning that once you hit 65 years old, you're done. You're not allowed to stay in office. You are completely done. I don't care how much experience you have, you're done. Because the moment you hit in those older ages, you start looking like freaking Nancy Pelosi. Like, I don't know how she's still in office. Like, I saw a video, I think I saved it, but it's on my phone. These people were trying to interview this congressman, or this I think it was a congressman. Dude was pulling up to the elevator in a freaking like cart. Like, dude was riding a cart, and he had a cane in the cart with him, and he was riding up to push he was trying to back away from them and get away to get on the elevator, but the guy was literally rolling up in a cart. Like, how is that? How do we still have people like that in office?
I will just say this. I don't disagree with you, because I think, yes, you need a blanket rule, but it's difficult because then you have situations like RFK Jr. is in his 70s and he looks like this.
It's called TRT.
I mean, hey.
Testosterone replacement therapy.
Yeah, might as well. If you can have it safely administered, yeah. So it's difficult. Like, yes, you are correct. Like, stereotypically,
I feel like you should have to maintain something. Like, if you maintain that, cool. Like, maybe 70, I could be okay with. But if you're just letting yourself go way downhill, you're not trying to do anything. And some of it's genetics. I mean, you can't really help some of it. But
valid.
If you're not doing anything about it, or I think you should have to go through like some sort of like mental test. Like,
people have talked about that. Have a cognitive test of some kind.
Yeah, have like a cognitive test that each person, like when you're up for your next term, or just intermittently, like halfway through your term or something like that, you have to do a test. I guess since terms technically are divisible by 2, every 2 years you have to do a cognitive test to find out if you're still competent enough to be there. And if you're not, then you have a set amount of time to find a suitable replacement for you or everyone, like whoever else will find a replacement for you, and you're not allowed to, like, you're just out. Like, I'm sorry.
That's one thing I've thought about, and I'm not saying I have the ultimate rebuttal here, but you know how there's always a common complaint in public schools about teachers teaching for the test, meaning that you know there's a test coming and you understand some of the questions that need to be answered on that test. So you teach specifically to those answers and those questions. So would we not have the same situation? I'm not disagreeing with you, but I wonder if you were to administer whatever kind of test, cognitive, physical, some abstract test out there. I don't know what it looks like, but if that were to become normalized, couldn't you, in a way, cheat the system by ensuring that your cognitive, physical, mental abilities are geared specifically for that test to ensure you maintain and control? And what I mean by that is like the Nancy Pelosi's of the world, those that have been in office since before the country was even invented. You know, it's like you could skew your lifestyle to ensure you pass that test.
Well, here's the kicker. Let's say they do it like every 2 years, because again, you know, your House is 4 years, your Senate is 6 years. Let's just say it's every 2 years. You're not going to know when it's going to happen. Someone's just going to show up, and it can't be anyone. It's got to be a neutral third party. Like,
that's the other question, is who administers it.
You can't have like that. That should be a new career field. Honestly, like you are for your state, like you have a set number of people, and these are government-based jobs, but your job is to administer the tests every 2 years, but it's a random date. So just like we have
drug testing in the NFL,
like random drug tests, like all that kind of stuff, it should be the same way, and it's once every 2 years or whatever. But it's like, you could try to prepare all you want, but it's like, what if that second year rolls around and you're like, okay, cool, I can spend this money, I can turn my brain this way, I can do all this kind of stuff, but then like January 1st of that year, they just come in and they're like, let's do the test. You wouldn't have time at all to do anything. You have to go in there and take the test. And if you try to defer it, or if you try to like skate around it, then that should be an automatic failure and dismissal, because you're there getting, you're supposed, like, you need to be at your peak performance when you're serving your country, whether or not, like, you know, in that capacity or in a military capacity, like either way. But again, these are just the ideas that we have. There's nothing that we can really do about it. I mean, at the end of the day, like, we're just here just throwing ideas out there and just talking about it. But again, none of this stuff in our country will ever actually get fixed unless the people that are in those higher age ranges start getting pushed out, and we start getting more 30s and 40-year-olds that are going through there, that are then aging into the system. And then as they're aging into the system, we get more people. You know, like, I get people don't want to do politics, but even if it is like a 4-year thing or a 6-year thing, like, so what? Like, go in there and do it. Like, I think a lot of people could be really good at it, but you have to be open-minded. You can't just go in there and be like, okay, cool, I'm a Republican, this is what I stand for, this is what I do. You have to be open to the other side's ideas as well. So I think that's where also, too, that caveat would be, is you'd probably get a lot of, that's why I like the age. I'm like, okay, we got to have like minimum 18 years old. Honestly, like, I could go higher, but you have to have at least voted. And you have to have at least experienced some aspects of this and know what's going on, because there's some people that would go off in there and, like, you get some Gen Zers, dog, that go in there and just start throwing their slang around. I'm sorry, I ain't having that. Like, I think you should have to be a certain age. Like, I think the 20 to 29, you should have, like, that age should have to start at 30. Honestly, like, I think it should have to start at 30 before you can run for any kind of political, like, city council, mayor, you know, your governor, like, whatever the case may be. You should have to, you know, be a certain age before you can. Like, you have to experience life.
Yeah.
So
I think it'd be a fun question to maybe ask the audience, those listening right now. How do we fix this? Tell us. Write a novel down below.
Give us some ideas. I'm pretty sure you'll see some of these in our TikTok reels. So comment. I noticed we've been getting some comments on some of those as of late, which, I mean, just to even kind of throw a couple of those out there. Let me see if I can actually pull this up real quick, because we did say we wanted to start doing a comment of the week. Let's see here. So we talked about one of our questions. I think this might have been the question from last week's. But this, so JC on TikTok, again, I don't know if these people are real because I don't use TikTok a lot, so I don't know who's real and who's not. But JC, we posed a question about what if our consciousness got swapped with someone every 10 years, a random person every 10 years. And he asked if we'd seen X-Men Apocalypse, the first scenes where the villain was trying to swap his conscious to another body. So kind of similar in that regard, only it's not like you have to force it. You just have to, it's just something that just happens. It was funny because we'll go ahead and just shout out a second one, but reliable cat farts. Again, that's an odd name.
What a username.
But they said, careful, CNN will say this is happening and it's Trump's fault. All they deal in is what ifs. So, I mean, to be fair, that's any news station, to be fair. They just all deal in what ifs, which is what we do here. Only we have fun with it, and we talk about serious topics, but we also have fun with it at the same time. So appreciate y'all's comments. Hopefully we can get more comments on just the full videos as a whole. But yeah, we wanted to start doing comments of the week, and so shout out to those two. And yeah.
No, definitely appreciate all of you out there listening week after week, or if this is your first time hanging out with us, definitely appreciate you. If you haven't done so already, I know we kind of asked you to leave a comment down below. Let us know what you think. What was your favorite topic from the episode? Is there anything that you think we should talk about next week in the next episode? And also, if you haven't done so, just give it a quick like, the thumbs up, give us a follow, give us a subscribe. You know all the buzzwords. You know what to do out there. And Riley, I'm going to throw you through a loop here. Give us some words of wisdom in 5 words or less. For those of you listening, I just put him on the spot. He had no idea this was coming.
Help us fix our country.
That was solid.